Moving on here for us here this evening, though, no matter your view of the way Buffalo responded to the blizzard, we all hope that leaders can learn lessons to better deal with the next one. And the city will turn to a downstate school to help with that process. Mayor Byron Brown announced over the weekend that New York University's Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service will look into how the city dealt in the aftermath of the storm and put together a report to be used both here and elsewhere. When that report is released, likely in the next few months, the city says it will be available for anyone in the public to see. So what can we expect to be a part of that investigation into the storm response? Joining us live tonight is one of the researchers who will work on the project, Professor Sarah Kaufman from NYU's Wagner School. We really appreciate you taking some time for this. I think when people heard that this was going to be happening, they immediately wondered, sort of, what's the point? How's this going to work? So I guess I'll start broad strokes. What are you going to be looking at as you kind of put this report together?
Sure, and thank you for having me this evening. We're going to look at the entirety of the storm, the preparation plans, the impacts of the storm, the recovery, the response, and then the recovery. What went right and what lessons can we learn for the next time around?
When we talk about some of the things that people maybe think could have been done better, some people say the driving bans should have been put in place earlier because obviously we know so many tragic stories of people who were out on the roads before the ban was put in place and then sort of got stuck because it happened so quickly and it was so powerful. Is there anything that you can say initially on that based on sort of your prior research looking into something like this? And I guess the difficult call that policymakers have when they're trying to determine the proper timing for something like this.
Sure, that is a challenge, certainly, and obviously there are so many challenges that came with this massive storm, this massive event. At this point, it's far too early to make any calls about what the right decisions should have been. We're just getting started. We're just diving in now, but we hope to have some good ideas within the spring.
There might be some people watching right now who lived through all of this who think, why do we need some downstate researchers telling us how to handle snow? We've had a lot of storms here, but can you talk about just the importance of getting like a full independent report into something like this? Because it's one thing to have, local folks doing this, or, if the county legislature or the Buffalo Common Council did something like this, but the importance of getting someone from the outside to come in and do something like this?
Yes, and I completely understand that perspective. The reason that that I believe Mayor Brown wanted to reach out to us is that we have an entirely independent perspective on this storm and how it was handled, so that we can provide a true assessment of the impacts, and we can have hopefully a lot to offer both to Buffalo and then other cold weather cities across the country. We certainly have dealt with storms of a different type here in New York City, although we sometimes get snow as well. But the idea is to provide an independent, comprehensive look at this storm without any allegiances to different groups or different advocacy entities, but instead to look at this from a holistic perspective.
Our producer, Zach, today, as he was talking to you in preparation for this interview, found out that you did something similar after Superstorm Sandy hit New York City a decade ago. It's crazy to think it's been that long ago.
Yes.
So you went in, sort of did something similar, right? You looked at it with an outside perspective. You put together a report. Yes. How pleased were you with what came of that report? Did policymakers, look through it and change some things? And I wonder what would be your expectation with the end result of your report here.
Yes, as you mentioned, we did do a look at transportation during and after Superstorm Sandy, which really impacted New York City significantly with power outages like you were discussing earlier. And all of these challenges are, even though a hurricane is obviously different from a snowstorm, there are similar impacts in communications to the public, preparation, evacuations. All of those different aspects are pretty similar. So leaders certainly took in our recommendations. Some of them were more related to things like absorbent pavement on the roads so that they could absorb stormwater. And some of the recommendations were to make data more interchangeable so that different government entities could communicate more easily and share information more easily. And so some of those recommendations were certainly incorporated. And hopefully we will produce recommendations that are viable for Buffalo and can be useful to the leadership there.
Finally, Professor, as we look at this storm, and it was historic, I mean, a lot of people feel like this was the worst storm in Buffalo's history, and we're a place that goes through storms. 8 years ago, we had Snowvember. Earlier this winter, we had a 7-foot snowstorm. Now we have this blizzard. Do you believe, as you look back at something like this, that if we're going to see these with more regularity, which a lot of people fear we're going to, it makes these after-action reports all the more important?
Yes, absolutely. We're starting to see major storm events, these 100-year storms or 50-year storms happen with increased regularity. They're no longer once-in-a-generation storms. We're seeing that here in the city with hurricanes. They're coming with some real force. We're seeing intense storms, and we're seeing them much more frequently. And so I think that by getting all of the information together, to figuring out the timeline of everything that has happened, what the impacts were, we can actually try and prepare and maybe hone our previous preparedness plans to make room for what might be coming down the line.
Professor Sarah Kaufman is with NYU's Wagner School and will be part of the team that will examine Buffalo's response to this blizzard. Thanks so much for your time. We'd love to have you back on to discuss your findings, and good luck to you.
Good. Thank you so much.
All right.